Welcome to episode 2 of the jaPODCAST, a monthly podcast combining topics related to Japan, Jamaica, anime, video games, travel, blogging, the Japanese language, and more. Through its various features, discussions, and interviews, the podcast aims to educate and entertain its listeners. I am your host Kirk from Jamaipanese.com. This episode is being recorded on Sunday, March 15th in the year 2015. Please excuse any crashing sounds you hear in the background. That would be my cat, trying her best to destroy my lair. In this episode of the jaPODCAST, I'll be sharing 9 travel tips for first-time visitors to Japan. So if you are visiting Japan very soon, plan to go to Japan in the near future, or just dreaming of Japan like I used to, then this episode is for you. These tips were all discovered and used during my own trip to Japan in late 2011, so I hope they prove useful. Episode 2 of the jaPODCAST begins now. Thank you for listening. Let's start with tip number 1. Social media. Ask and the info will be given. We live in a socially networked world now. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and more. Whether it's before your trip and you have a couple pre-trip questions, or while in Japan and you have questions, blast it out via social media. And more often than not, an answer or sometimes a few answers will come flying in. Asking what is the must-see area in a city, or where to get something tasty to eat, or hostel or hotel recommendations or deals are some simple example questions. Tip number 2, Japan Rail Pass. The first tip I always give to anyone visiting Japan for more than 7 days is get a Japan Rail Pass or a JR Rail Pass before you arrive. They come in 7-day, 14-day, and 21-day options and allows visitors to take JR trains and some buses for free. And it even gets you discounts at some establishments. Tip number 3, go outside Tokyo. Japan is more than Tokyo and more than its big cities. Go off the beaten path, explore the unknown, get out of the shadow of the skyscrapers, and see a side of Japan not many visitors get a chance to experience and see. Tip number 4, go outside the regular attractions. In every city or every country, there are usually certain locations and attractions that are a must-see. In Paris, you have to go to the Eiffel Tower. In Washington, D.C., then it's the Smithsonian Museum. Every city in Japan will have a handful of must-see spots like the Kinkakuji in Kyoto. However, seek out the hidden gems, the local spots, especially if you have a friend or a local guide in Japan. Tip number 5, learn some Japanese. Unlike not too long ago, when you'd have to be almost completely fluent in Japanese to function in Japan, now it's very different. However, knowing a few dozen words and sentences can make everyday interactions much easier. I'd advise travelers to learn directions, colors, polite greetings, how much does it cost, and a few more basic phrases that can be easily learned in the weeks and days leading up to a trip to Japan and reinforced during the very long flight. Tip number 6, travel in a group. Traveling in groups of 2 or more to Japan and when traveling around Japan has many benefits. The top 3 for me would be: you'd be more confident to go off the beaten path and access more challenging destinations. You'll also be able to share memories and experiences with someone else or a group. And finally, there are many group discounts that can result in savings on accommodations, transportation, food, and more. Tip number 7, be organized. My own trip to Japan taught me the importance of being organized. Basic things like organizing travel documents and contact information, planning day trips after researching online, budgeting your cash and splitting it between different days makes most things so much easier. If you at least attempt to have some structure to traveling, but you don't need to evolve into a cyborg. Tip number 8, travel apps. We live in the age of the smartphone. Most of us now own one, so why not use it for more than just selfies? If you have an internet-enabled phone in Japan, or you bring your phone that's compatible with one of Japan's mobile networks, or you use a Wi-Fi dongle like I did when I was there are numerous apps that make your time in Japan a little easier. From Japanese learning apps like Kanji Quiz to must-haves like the Hyperdia Japan Rail Search, put that smartphone to use while in Japan. I actually made a post titled 10 Android apps that made my Japan trip that much easier. I did that not long after returning from Japan. So if you are an Android user, I do believe that most, if not all, those apps are still quite usable. So I'll leave a link in the show notes for Android users to check that out. And finally, tip number 9. Take gifts from your country. What's better than a thank you to show your gratitude? A thank you with a gift. I expected to interact with a lot of persons while in Japan, and so I loaded up my suitcase with gifts to show my appreciation. In my case, seeing that I'm traveling from Jamaica, I brought Blue Mountain coffee, large print photographs of Jamaica I took, keyrings, armbands, snacks, and a few other items. And there you have it, my 9 tips for first-time visitors to Japan. Feel free to tweet me at Jamaipanese, leave a comment on my Facebook page, or send me a message via contact@jamaipanese.com. Ask a question or share your own tips related to travel and Japan. Also, feel free to provide feedback on this episode and suggestions for future episodes of the jaPODCAST. I am your host Kirk from Jamaipanese.com. Let me leave you with a sample of an awesome and relevant song by a group named The Paper Lions titled Traveling. Thank you for listening to episode 2 of the jaPODCAST. Tune in next time.
Traveling the road less known is where I wanna be. My compass directing, electing an open road with golden trees. But there's an old man in need on the ground. I try not to make a sound. He holds out his hand as I walk away. I hear him say, please don't be a stranger in my place. Please don't be a stranger in my place, yeah.